On the channel this season, we have talked at length about some promising futures in the NHL, teams like Chicago and Pittsburgh, but today I wanted to talk about a team that is mixing both a great present and future in the Anaheim Ducks. A team that I thought was going to be a strong contender to make the playoffs this season, but not only are they in a playoff spot, they're first among all teams in the Pacific Division. Currently with a 14-7-1 record, the Ducks have had a couple of slumps here and there, but generally they have been so much fun to watch, and in terms of just the pure vibes, have looked better than they have in such a long time. So I wanted to break down this Ducks team, what feels different about them, and what is great about both the current iteration of the team and the prospect pool they still have coming up. Even though they've had a lot of graduates recently, there's still some really interesting talent coming in the future. So make sure you guys watch till the end as we break down everything with this Ducks team right now, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey breakdowns just like this all throughout the season. Now, the Ducks are a team that I wanted to go deep into because they have been such a riot this year. In so many ways, I would say they're probably the most entertaining team in the NHL this year. They got the surprising factor being way better than people expect, the youth core, the synergy. It's all come up in incredible ways. They've had so many good comebacks. They've had big overtime wins, big time goals out of nowhere. It's just all been there. Plus, in terms of a group that I just like rooting for, they have so many good prospects that I've enjoyed watching for such a long time that have really been able to step up their game. That was really the big thing I needed to see out of this Ducks team this season. Even if they didn't end up making the playoffs, just the improvement in that core that's already been locked into place, that's what I think was most important for this franchise long term. You had a lot of good young pieces, but it was about them taking that next step. Of course, you have the top two younger players on that forward group that have really taken a major leap. Cutter Gauthier is a big one, somebody that always has had unbelievable scoring potential. Last year, showed it a bit more in the second half, but finished with 44 points in 82 games. This year is off to an absolute tear of a start. 26 points and 13 goals through 22 games. One of the leading goal scorers in the NHL this year. Considering how good his shot always was, it's not much of a surprise, but now he's finally starting to find ways to score in different situations, and that kind of balance to his game has helped quite a bit. But also, Gauthier has just always kind of been a rock star, and I felt like last year was a bit of a slower start than maybe he really deserved in the score sheet. Now I think we're starting to see the scales tip a bit more in his favor. Of course, we've already talked about it a lot on this channel, but Leo Carlsson, of course, is another big one. At 20 years old, taking a pretty big step. Lately hasn't been as dominant, but has still had a great start to the season. 29 points in 22 games, about as good as you could ask for in terms of a breakout season for him. He's always had the potential, always had those moments. Now he's starting to string it all together throughout one start to the year. Mason McTavish hasn't quite been at the breakout level, but he also started the season pretty late. Still is on pace for 52 points this year, which, considering his up and down deployment, I think is pretty okay for him, and once he actually starts playing to his level, the points I think will get just a bit higher as well. He's not a young player anymore, but I did want to shout out Troy Terry, who is also having a great start to his season, has been a GOAT for my fantasy team, thank goodness, because I've needed it, but through 22 games also has been terrific. 7 goals, 18 assists, 25 points. That's just the type of stat lines the Ducks are working with right now. You have on the goaltending side, of course, Lukas Dostal, who continues to be critically important for this franchise. I've been banging the drums on this guy for a long time, but he just continues to put up great results after just breaking out in such a major way last year. A goal state of expected, is continuing to play great this year. A 904 save percentage through 17 games. And even though I think the Ducks defense has taken a step, it's still not at the level it needs to be. So Dostal saving a lot of games here has really helped the Ducks' chances. But we've been talking about guys that have been in the NHL already that are taking that next leap. The Ducks have also had a good balance and a good mix of guys that have really taken steps into the NHL to solidify themselves as NHLers. I mean, a big one is Beckett Seneca, who continues to surprise me, man. His preseason I just thought was a little bit wonky. Some of the decisions defensively were a bit immature for me, but the Ducks put him in a position in the top 6 that was courteous to him, with some really good players around him to kind of insulate him into the NHL, and he has done fantastic with that, getting 16 points and 7 goals through 22 games. They played him pretty much perfectly and coached him really well so far, which is great to see. Yes, there are still going to be some holes here and there, but Seneca, I think, makes it up so much with the vision and the creativity. He'll have a turnover, then get the puck back, and then sling it for a great assist, and just make it work no matter the situation, and that type of adaptability is something I've liked in Seneca's game game for a long time, but he's starting to really put it all together in one place here in the NHL. And at 19, that's pretty interesting to see already happen, let alone what he is in a few years' time. Somebody that I've really enjoyed watching so far is Olen Zellweger as well, as a former second rounder. He's always been a prospect I've enjoyed watching. The NHL projection has always been a bit of a question mark. Would he be able to really jump there, gain the coach's trust? But so far he has. And even though the points haven't been unbelievable, he's been playing some really good hockey, I feel like. In 22 games, he gets 7 points. And I think the points will start racking up a lot more over the second half of the year. But him really establishing himself as a top 4D, massive for Anaheim. Beforehand, there were flashes, but now I think Zellweger is truly breaking out in a big way. Plus, a couple of D that have also become mainstays. Drew Hellison is one that I think has played pretty well too, has always had some good tools, but putting it all together has been a bit of a question mark. This year, though, 9 points in 22 games and playing some pretty big minutes for this Ducks team. You also got Ian Moore as well, who we've talked about a little bit as kind of an under-the-radar D, but 6'3", 205 pounds, another big-time one for the Ducks defense. He's played some pretty big minutes as well, and 3 points for 15 games. I think when he's played pretty well there, so just having that extra element for that Ducks defense has helped quite a bit. One thing the Ducks, though, critically this offseason tried to target was getting some more veteran presences to kind of glue everything together, and of course Chris Kreider is a great example of that, somebody that has been a big-time goal scorer for them, has practically fixed that power play overnight, not single-handedly of course, but it's been a pretty big reason for that. But I think the Ducks were pretty smart in making a balanced roster here, nothing that's overwhelming on one side or the other. They weren't sacrificing too much youth to try to get these roster spots for the older guys. They've gone for a good mix here and really tried to prioritize the fits and the synergy and the potential chemistry there. And with how many playmakers they had, a player like Chris Kreider being added onto that team, it was just a complete no-brainer. But now you have this mix of youth and skill and speed, but also tenacity and some better defensive improvements. Still some ways to go, but in terms of that forward group, it is just pure fun all the time, and I am absolutely here for it. Now, the Ducks aren't without their issues, especially for a younger team. They kind of feel like it a bit on the ice. They have some circus games. They have some crazy ones that defensively aren't as coherent, to say the least. In terms of expected goals for per 60, they're 6th in the entire NHL at 5-on-5. So in terms of generating chances, they're among the best. But then you have the expected goals against, and they're second last in the NHL, only ahead of the Vancouver Canucks, and not a great spot to be in. This has made a player like Lukas Dostal's life more difficult, but this was also kind of the case last year too, so it's not really that much more of an adjustment, but Dostal is still doing a good job. But now, with the defense still being at a relatively meh level, the difference has been the offense. The difference has been how much that power play has been clicking, and that's been giving them a much needed boost. I will say this, if the defense continues to be second last in the league in expected goals against, then I do think the Ducks could come back down to earth just a little bit, because the offense would have a tall order to continue day after day, game after game, to be able to make up for that defensive level. But also, again, you have a ton of younger players here that are still getting their feet wet, and in the second half, hopefully, can get a little bit more adjusted. All in all, though, the Ducks will certainly take the position they're in first in the Pacific Division, and yes, the Pacific has kind of been a bit funky this year, to say the least, but every division has their weird inconsistencies, and the Ducks are just taking advantage of the situation in front of them. One thing that is for sure, though, is that the Ducks have elevated themselves into that playoff conversation. They deserve your respect now for just how unbelievably clutch they have been this year, how good that offense is, how scary those young players are. Even though they've had some good starts in the past, they haven't had quite the energy that they've had to start out this season. Yes, there are issues, but I think especially the base you have to work with here is among the best in the league. And that leads me on to the other part of this Ducks team, because as much as you have a great core in place already with some really interesting players, you still have a prospect pool that's kicking pretty well, has some pretty interesting options, and even though you've had some really big graduates recently, you're still going to have some good depth coming up, especially over the next couple of seasons. In terms of the forward group on the prospect side, this is definitely the one that's been hurt the most with the recent graduates, but you still have some really interesting prospects. Roger McQueen, of course, is one that, as a high draft pick, is somebody with a ton of talent. I still have questions about the translatability, but he's had a good last few weeks in the NCAA, up to 11 points in 13 games. Still incredibly raw, and I don't think you'd see him for another couple of years at the very least, but still somebody to keep an eye on. Eric Nilsson, as a second rounder from last year's class, is also having his freshman season in the NCAA. Not nearly as tantalizing in terms of the point totals, but I got to see him this last weekend with MSU playing the Badgers, and I think he looked very strong, very confident with his IQ, and should have more points in the season with how he's playing, just the pucks aren't going in for for him. But you also got Lucas Pettersson on the Swedish side as well in the SHL this season, has putting up some pretty good numbers. 13 points in 22 games as a 19-year-old, not half bad at all. His skill level is absolutely sky high, and I don't know how much he fits within the Ducks system right now, but could be another piece that you could just plop in a couple of years if he continues to develop well. Maxime Massé, I think, could be an interesting bottom sixer, is having a pretty good season in the QMJHL up to this point. Austin Bernovic scores goals in the power play. We'll see how much that translates. Igor Sedorov is somebody that I think has also been a pretty underrated prospect for the Ducks for a while as a third rounder in 2023. He's somebody that just continues to score well and well no matter the situation. Last year played pretty well as a first year in the AHL, and this year is up to 13 points in 16 games as well at 21 years old. So maybe somebody else that could be a fixture on that bottom six. We'll have to wait and see. But I think in terms of the forward group, you have a really interesting mix of projectability and skill level still. And even though you don't have like the Senecas or the Cutter Gauthiers in that pool anymore, still some good talent to pull from. And then on the defensive level, you have so many guys coming up still that I think could make impacts in the NHL. Of course, Stein Solberg is the big one to me. Mintyukov's trade rumor status, I think, makes Solberg a lot more likely to be an NHLer long term. Even though he's not going to be putting up massive point totals anywhere, I think he's always just been a very impressive defensive player with a great level of physicality and confidence, even with the puck on his stick. And again, even though the point totals aren't going to be amazing, I think just as like a 20-point just dog on your third pair, he's going to be perfect in that role. Terrence Smith, the complete opposite type of defenseman, still pretty big at 6'2", 290 pounds, but he is all electricity all of the time, similar to an Olin Zellweger, who also played in Everett this year, 21 points in 22 games. Another left shot in that system, and with Zellweger looking as good as he is on the offensive side, I don't know how much room Smith has within that Ducks system, but still somebody that in case of any crazy events happening, could be somebody that has a good backup offensively that could end up coming into the NHL. You got Lassie Boyles from last year's drafted 60th overall, playing some pretty big minutes in the Liga this year, 5 points in 24 games. Tristan Leno is somebody that maybe has stagnated a bit in the AHL this year, but was great as a rookie last season as a more offensive-leaning D. He's somebody that also with the Ducks' recent additions on the defense, the guys like Trouba, has gotten less of an opportunity than maybe he would have otherwise gotten, but he'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. You also got, of course, on the goaltending side, Damian Clara, the Italian goaltender, who in Europe is looking really interesting. I wasn't so sure of him at 60th overall in his draft class, but 6'6", 214 pounds. He's really played well in the pro levels recently. In the SHL this year at 892 save percentage, after having a 910 save percentage in the Liga last season. The save percentage isn't fantastic, but also brightness is kind of a strange one. You have Colin Delia, who was a former NHLer, at like a 790 save percentage, so that kind of gives you an idea of the other goaltenders in that system. And I would say, considering that, Clara has done okay. Even though I don't think he'll steal Lucas Dostal's starting net whatsoever. I think Clara could be an interesting fixture as maybe a backup long term, and especially Dostal and Clara, those two dueling it out together, I think could be a really interesting pair. Plus, just having an Italian goaltender in the NHL would absolutely rule. But you get an idea here of just how balanced this Ducks prospect pool is. It might not be top 3, top 5 anymore, but you still have so many good weapons to work with. Even on the forward group, which I think has had some big graduates that have kind of weakened it a bit, you still have players like Roger McQueen and Eric Nielsen and Maxime Massé and some really interesting players I think will be NHL players long term. So you have roles to fit there, and even though your top end core might be pretty much locked in at this point, you're gonna have some really good support players coming. That's really why I'm most excited about this Ducks team, because not only is the now incredibly fun and so entertaining, they also have another layer of players coming up, and maybe they won't all make it, of course, because you do have that core locked into place, and there is only so many roster spots as some of the defensive prospects are starting to learn right now. Poor Pavel Mintyukov. But it's a nice problem to have, right? You have too many interesting young players that you have to move a few out. Wow, big deal, big whoop. It's fantastic news for a Ducks team that has been rebuilding for such a long time and just been scraping to get any bit of traction within the NHL standings. Now they have officially arrived, and even if they don't make the playoffs this year, even if there's a big collapse or something, there's still going to be a tank long term. There's still going to be absolute weapons all throughout this roster that will get them there eventually, and that has pretty much been confirmed by the improvements this year. I just love what that core is doing, and even though there is issues there, how exciting they are, how much youth is spread across that roster, and how much they're willing to have fun every single night. It's just a breath of fresh air, and the Ducks are another great young team taking that next step this season, and I could not be happier. But those are my quick thoughts on a Ducks team that is looking solid right now, but fantastic in the future with a good pool still coming up. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the breakdown. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Comment down below your thoughts on this Ducks team and what you think their future lies in store, and what other prospects in their pool do you think will be NHLers in the future. Drop your thoughts down below on that. Of course, if you guys want some more videos, you can become a channel member here by hitting the join button next to the subscribe button, or hitting the link in the description down below. For a couple bucks a month, you get exclusive videos every single week, plus exclusive member polls you guys will be a part of, and exclusive emoji as well. And a big shout out to everybody that's members right now. Their names are all up here on the screen. Thank you guys so much. But that's gonna be it for me, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one. Have a fantastic hockey day, and goodbye.